morning to anyone and everyone who's joining us from the West Coast. Really appreciate you taking your time out of your day to join the conversation today. I hope the music got you all pumped up and excited about this jam-packed session that we have lined up for you. So if you joined us in the past, and welcome back. Ivan and I, who's my co-host here, we tend to run these conversations on a monthly basis. Anyone who's new to this, then thank you for joining and welcome to the session. Ivan Sandoval, he's my co-host. He's the Senior Marketing Manager at Traffic, and my name is Clarice. I look after and take care of the product marketing on the Moto Insight team. So thanks again for hopping on. Ivan, how you doing?
Good. How are you, Clarice?
Awesome. Excited about the conversation today, that's for sure.
Yeah, this power-packed lineup today. We had a cool session last month, and thank everybody for joining the pre-order webinar, pre-order strategies for dealers in December. And Clarice and I got together over the holidays and said, hey, how can we start 2022 with a bang? What can we do? I said, hey, why don't we get Mathew Growden from Google, and we'll invite website like T Advantage and ActiveX and get like real full powerhouse to start your 2022 off on the right foot. So really, what Clarice and I sort of wanted to sort of address, is there are 5 questions that consumers ask themselves, and I'm sure you guys have seen this before, but which car is best? Is it right for me? Can I afford it? Where should I buy it? Am I getting a deal? And we said, well, isn't there a couple of more questions that we have to ask in 2022? And so Clarice and I said, hey, you know what? There is. Do they have it in stock, right? At the bottom left there. And how do they treat me, right? Those are 2 questions that are additional. Do they have it in stock with inventory shortages now? This is a legitimate question. And like if you don't have it in stock, you're going back to the top of the funnel, or at least to the middle of the funnel, about where should I buy it, or is it right for me? And then how do they treat me is another one that we talked about. And I'm glad ActiveX is on the call today, because we all know that, we get leads and we try really hard to get leads. But if we mess up that lead, like if we don't call them, at the right, or we're messaging too much or messaging not enough, we're going to lose that person and they're going to go back to where should I buy it? And so that conversation then moved into the fact that car buying is a road traveled and not a destination, right? At every point on that road, on that funnel, somebody can go back to the top or wherever, because, obviously there's a lot of different points that users will absorb that experience and start over. And so we decided to come up with the lineup, Clarice, and this is the lineup that we came up with on the journey to purchasing a vehicle.
Exactly. Well, normally our conversation is very specific to either a specific step in the consumer journey or relevant to either a question or comment that comes up from one of our dealer partners or attendees from these sessions. So we really wanted to kick off 2022 on the right foot and bring the experts to the table who can share with us some insights and best practices that you can take away. You can thin slice it and take away anything that you think that applies to you and to your profile and to your dealership team as well. So today we're going to start with Ivan. Ivan is going to talk to us about automation in 2022 and why is that important. So we think about influencing consumer, thinking about that funnel. We're going from influence to engage. And we're going to have Madeleine from the T Advantage team, she's a National Director of Online Consulting. She's going to talk to us about Black Hat SEO and some website best practices as well. And then, of course, we're going to have Mathew. So if you've seen Mathew present before, he's going to tell us anything and everything to do with consumers, how they search, what they're looking for, what they're watching, and how that trend is actually evolving and changing constantly still. So that Mathew will be in the middle of our segment here. And then I'll come in and talk a little bit about digital retail and what we see about returning customers, like returning customer activity and their conversion, and how dealerships can leverage and drive those consumers back into the platform to ensure that they convert them effectively and efficiently. And then we're still talking about conversion. We're going to have Rui from the ActiveX team talking about mining your own database, to some finance and lease renewal best practices based on the information that that team sees in that tool. So super exciting lineup. Get your screen grabs ready for sure. There's some great insights that are going to be shared. So Ivan, before we kind of jump into your section, you picked this topic because you thought it would be super relevant, important for us this year. So just maybe give it a little bit of context around that.
Yeah, thanks, Clarice. You know, when it comes to the funnel, it's so big, right? There's so many different channels. There's so many different users and customers and dealerships competing. And so, you know, we started off with me at the top myself at the top, because, you know, as it comes down the funnel, it's the hardest capture is with at the top, right? And you can't do that manually anymore. There's just so many variables that you need an automated software to plug into the automated tools of Google and some of these other platforms. And me being dealership side, of course, you want to make sure that you know how to make it work for your dealership, because, you know, I was dealership side, and so, like, let's say this huge machine that you have in front of you, you want to still put in your objectives. You want to still steer the AI, steer that machine, and make sure it's reaching your goals, and it optimizes for what you input into it. So that's why I kind of chose this topic to start off with. So, you know, we can go on the next slide and get right into it. And one of the key aspects is for all dealers out there, everybody, I mean, every digital property, is that customized journeys are essential in 2022. Interestingly, when COVID-19 hit, AI-enabled companies adapted their offerings to ensure customers would have great at-home experiences, right? And those customers experience great personalized service. And so now customers online require this type of personalization. So AI tools are no longer nice to have, rather they're a key element of consumer expectation. And part of that expectation is hyper-personalization. You want to make sure you're automating your marketing to enable a personalized experience to every single potential customer who crosses your path for every single vehicle line you have to offer. And the personalization journey starts right from the user search query. That's exactly, because that's where the intent is. So for example, here, a year, make, model search, this is 22 Ram 1500, requires a year, make, model ad, not a general ad, not a sort of all Rams. It requires a year, make, model ad. You get increased click-through rate and lower cost per click. And we'll talk about cost per click in a couple of slides, but increased click-through rate because the user is seeing their query matched up when an ad matches as close as possible to the intent of that user search query. And to take it a step further, you know, answering these questions on the next slide, we'll see how we can sort of answer those buyer questions, right, within a search ad. And all of this happens dynamically with AI. So if a user wants to know the price, that's the can I afford it question, right? So you want to make sure you have that dynamic pricing inserted. So you see here, 22 Ram 1500, starting at 66,550. That's a great starting point for a customer. I'm going to click that ad because, hey, you know what? Their lowest price Ram 1500 is 66,550. I'm in. But there's more questions, right? The user wants to know if it's available. This is the new question in 2022. Do they have it in stock, right? So now the dynamic inventory count that AI puts into these platforms is so relevant, right? Currently 58 in stock, awesome. So now I know if I go to this dealership, I know that I can get a test driver. There's gonna be a variety of vehicles that I can choose from and not have to pre-order. And then the other question is, which vehicle do I need? Let's say the user might want a different trim. You know, in this case, there's a classic, you know, maybe it was they had a DT and maybe they want a classic. So dynamically using AI, we insert, or AI providers insert other relevant sort of site links in there for classics. You can see right beside it, use Ram 1500s. Maybe they want to use Ram 1500s. So all of this is answering buyers' questions. And as we're customizing the journey, we want to recognize the intent of those searches. Where do those users want to go if they put in that kind of search query? So now that you have the click, you want to send them to the right landing page. So here we have a new 2022, let's say on the left-hand side, we'll start with 2022-21 Nissan Rogue SV all-wheel drive, that's a pretty long tail keyword. It's pretty specific. So there's only one in stock. The landing page, obviously the ad's going to talk about a 2021, and then the landing page is going to go straight to the VDP. Think about the experience that user gets, right? They get to see the photos right away, the price is right there. They can do their digital retailing or mess around with the CTAs or, you know, whatever the case may be. And then, but beside it, let's say somebody puts in new 2022 Nissan Rogue. Well, you know what? They want to see all new 2022 Nissan Rogues. So you send them to the new year make model SRP, right? What a great experience that is. But what if they just put Nissan Rogue and not, you know, new 2022? Well, it seems to me like that user doesn't know if they want a new or a used. So in that case, you create an ad that says we have new and used in stock, and you send them to the make model SRP. And so customized user journeys, you've customized that portion, right when they come into your website. But what about on their returning visit? You want to move them down the funnel. So once the user has been to your website, on their returning visit, so they've searched for a vehicle, they've gone to your website, they've looked at photos, they saw the description. But now they're going to go home, they're going to talk to their wife, and say, you know what, can we afford that? Like, what's the biweekly payment? You know, we're going to go snowboarding next weekend. Like, how much is it for a Thule? Are you sure we can afford it? Like, you know, how much is our trade worth, or all that kind of stuff? So guess what? Now when this user does a search, you put them, automation AI puts them on a remarketing list. And instead of showing them an ad that brings you back to the website, we're gonna, or you should, best practices, give an ad that brings them to the digital retailing tool. And if you could see I've highlighted the URL there, that says that URL we're sending them on their returning visit is actually going to the digital retailing tool, so they can do all those cool things like calculate their payments, add accessories, value their trade. And we can even see in the ad, we put starting at $225 biweekly, because now they're further down the funnel. So you want to make sure you're customizing a user journey, even on their remarketing, sending them to a different landing page, making sure that they get a better experience. And we could go next slide. And it's interesting because it all seems easy, right? And it all seems obvious, but it's actually only AI and automation software that makes all of that happen. A lot of the agencies and providers out there say they do this, but they really don't. And the way you can tell is the fact that AI and automation software, when it talks to a platform like Google, you'll actually, if you ask for a change history report, and I highly recommend you go to your agency and ask for a change history report for your search ads, you're going to see 100,000 changes, at least in the hundreds of thousands of changes monthly, tens of thousands to hundreds of thousands every month. You're going to have thousands of ad groups. You're going to have hundreds of campaigns, because AI is constantly optimizing on a daily basis. A manual agency will only have 50 changes, 40 changes, something to that matter. And what does that mean to you? All of these changes. Well, what it means is increased impressions. You're getting more impressions than your competition. You're getting increased clicks, users, but ultimately you're getting the best user experience. And on top of that, and I've been dealership side, trust me, I know it'll save you a lot of money while doing it. Because AI, the way automation AI works is, because it's optimizing on so many data points, it gives you a great quality score. And the better your quality score, the less you're going to pay. If you look at the Venn diagram on the right, there's 3 elements to a quality score. One is ad relevance, and you saw that the ad that I showed above was very relevant. The landing page experience, so now when you're sending them to exactly what they want, that landing page experience is fantastic. Or expected click-through rate, and expected click-through rate as well. So it knows, because other users have clicked on this ad so many times because it's relevant to them, they're going to get a high click-through rate as well. And so your quality score is going to enable you to have a low cost per click. And I can't stress this enough. A lot of people assume that the lower your overall cost per click is actually a cheap, i.e. cheap click, but it's not. It's the opposite. The lower your overall CPC, cost per click, the more Google has deemed your ads to be the most relevant for their user. And I'll give you a quick example. Let's say you're, a mattress company, Sleep Country Canada. Let's say you wanted to bid on a Ram 1500. Would Sleep Country Canada pay more for that click or less for that click? They're going to pay more for that click. Why? Because mattresses have nothing to do with RAM 1500. Meanwhile, an AI automated agency has everything to do with the RAM 1500. And so Google's going to want to give their users a great experience, and they're going to make you pay less for that click. So a takeaway that I'll share at the end is that your cost per click KPI, better than anything else, is the most prominent indicator of the performance of your agency. Now, for those of you that want to benchmark CPC, here's a couple of them that I put up there. For brand name, you should be in and around the 43-cent mark. For new car inventory, you should be in the $1.58 mark. And for used cars, you should be in the $1.39 mark, in and around there. And here's a case study that I did that shows how much you can save moving from a manual agency to an automated AI agency. So you see the dealership on top with the manual had a 15% management fee. So they think they're getting a deal. Total cost is $2,300, but their average cost per click was $3.74. And the total users was 535 users, right, for that 2,300. When you move to an automated agency, okay, the management fee is 25%, pretty standard. They're investing in technology. Total cost is only $200 more, but the average cost per click is 52 cents, which means the total number of users that this was us in our case, but that we got off these campaign for this $200 more was 3,846 users. That's 3,300 more users, okay, than the manual campaign. And just think about, you could probably reduce your spend $500 or whatever the case may be, or $1,000 even in this case, and still get more users for less spend. And again, what about the quality of clicks? You can just look at it as all these search terms that you're available for in Auction Insights and whatever the case is, you're still going to get all 535 of those agency clicks that the manual agency got, right? You're going to get all of those. Plus, you're going to get 3,311 more. Not only that, but think about how many more impressions, because, you know, Google Ads works on a daily budget. You're going to get 5,000 more impressions on average per day to capture even more potential quality clicks. So here's a cool quote from a book called Join or Die, Digital Advertising in the Age of Automation. And if you visit our Traffic LinkedIn channel, Pierre-Luc Caron and I, Pierre-Luc Caron is a strategist. We have a great conversation on this book, but you have to look at it as the machine is not your enemy, but a friend in need of guidance. And so here's where I'm going to get into some of the aspects that you can do at your dealership to stir the AI, make sure it's reaching your objectives. And we'll go next slide. Oh. So one of the items that you definitely have to do to make your automation work for your dealership is to use engagement rules to set your overall strategy. AI will create ads for everything you have in stock, right? Okay. So, but you want to eliminate ads for certain sort of vehicles. So, like, let's say non-merchandise units, vehicles with less than 5 photos. Those provide a bad user experience. You don't want to give that data back to Google, because people are not. They're going to bounce out, and Google's going to say, "Well, you know what? This landing page isn't that great." And then that's going to affect the rest of your AI. So don't even show them, hey, the vehicle just came in, merchandise it, get in front, clear the snow out, get it into your studio, take a few photos, and then get it out there advertised, you know, to the public and on Google, et cetera. Low inventory level model. So again, when you don't have too many of them, you want to, you know, sort of pause those campaigns and make so that way the money goes to the more strategic units, ones that you have more in stock. Cars in less than 15 days in stock. This ensures merchandise and learned vehicles get more exposure. And then junkers, right? You wouldn't even advertise those anyway. Sometimes those DMSs put them on there. And I know from my experience, my DP was like, oh my God, I can't believe that vehicle's on there. But anyways, you want to pause those. You don't want to pay for those. Maybe they'll show up on your site. You don't want to be putting money behind them. So vehicles under $5,000, wholesale them, send them to auction. I don't even think the auctions would take that kind of vehicle, but anyways, just don't advertise them. And then using bid adjustments to focus the AI on high converting demographic data. So bid adjustments allow you to show your ads more or less frequently based on where, when, and how people search. And you can see here in this example, mobile, let's do a 25% bid adjustment up, or rural, you want to, you know, maybe reduce it if you're in the city, or 1 a.m. to 5 a.m. you want to reduce 60% bid adjustment because, hey, you don't want to show your Dodge Challengers and Corvettes to drunk guys that just came home from the bar, right? You know what I mean? So, but, you know, take this one with a grain of salt. because AI will eventually figure most of these adjustments out. They have tools like smart bidding, so they'll figure out that a click at 2 a.m. on a Saturday night isn't probably the best click, and they'll adjust. But where this stuff is very important is on the next slide when we talk about vehicle bid adjustments. That's where it's really important, right? Depending on your inventory position, these strategies for bid adjusting on individual vehicle lines is very important, right? You want to bid up on vehicles you have plenty in stock, right? You want to bid down on high search dreamer vehicles. And then you want to bid adjust seasonally based on model. And then when I say bid down on high search dreamer vehicles, when you have one or two, Mustangs in stock or 370Zs, they actually get a lot of clicks. They actually get a lot of impressions. There's a lot of dreamers out there, and they click on your ads quite a bit, but they're not necessarily going to buy them. So you don't really want to have too much exposure on those because they're just really wasting your clicks. I'm sure they'll sell themselves. And of course, bid adjust is seasonally based on model. Hey, do you want to be advertising your Mustang convertibles during winter? It's probably a better click, more exposure you're going to get, and better AI in the spring. And then what you want to do is develop custom audience segments using your first party database for more efficient campaigns. This is something I highly suggest you do yourself or with your agency. Take a list of 500 of your contacts, sold customers, okay? Upload them to native platforms like Google. Usually about half of them are going to be matched. And so now you have an audience set of 250 who already bought from you. But the cool thing is the AI algorithm will then create lookalike audiences, which are high converting. They're going to be similar to the people you've already sold. They have similar traits and similar buying patterns. But now you have strangers who look just like those people. Suddenly you have a highly targeted segment that you can use to convert on your campaigns. And here's a custom audience case study that I did with a Hyundai dealership in December 2021. What we did there was we uploaded their audience list of customers who had vehicles over 4 years, plus lease renewals up to a year. I personally like to change my cars every 3 years, but we went with 4 years anyways. And here's what we saw. And remember, like, this is a screenshot from our performance reviews. You got to remember, like, this is December, where I'm sure most of your KPIs went down. In this case, we had a 59% increase in clicks. We had 37% increase in VDP views, and we had a 36% increase in conversions. So that is pretty good for a December campaign. And it's because it was targeted. And then finally, you want to make automation work. The way to make automation work the best for your dealership is to give it time. Okay, AI and automation need time to optimize. So you want to give your campaigns at least 60 days to see best results. AI itself needs at least 14 days just to learn. And of course, 45 more days to run. Of course, you got to think, when the 20th comes, you get desperate, you change course or something like that. You aren't hitting your numbers. Don't do that. Wait a little bit for these campaigns. Give them some time. And I know there's some OEMs on the calls, and I know that's not going to happen, but I'm going to bring it up anyways. 60 days minimum. Like if they could do their offers over 60 days rather than 30 days, first, it would be a lot less work. And second, it would definitely be a lot more optimal for them, especially in the last 30 days. Those campaigns are going to start to really do the best work for them. So time is of the essence for automation. I can't stress that enough.
Ivan, thank you so much. Always enjoy your insights. Lots of great information and best practices for our listeners to take away. I've asked you, pull out 3 things, if anything, what would be the main 3 takeaways that you would recommend our listeners actually implement after your session?
Yeah, so I wanted to jot these down, and I know there's questions coming in, guys, and we're absolutely going to get to them. There will be a Q&A afterwards. Love answering those. So the key takeaways: see if your ads and landing pages match the intent of your search. Go into your browser, open up a private window, and search for variations of your year, make, model. Do it just like I did, like Nissan Rogue 2022, and make sure that the ad matches up to what you're putting in, that it includes all those dynamic capabilities of inventory count and price. And then when you click on it, that it lands on the right page. Second, find out your average cost per click. Very important. Ask your agency to provide this. And remember to include model searches, because with your brand name, anybody and everybody can get a 25% CPC. If you're under $2, you're with a high performing vendor. If not, you're definitely wasting ad spend. I just literally had a conversation on Monday with a dealer, and they're with a competitor. I won't name the competitor, but it's a definitely high ranking automotive digital marketing agency. And I asked them, hey, listen, for our dealership, Stellantis dealership, we had $1.48 cost per click. I said, well, what's your cost per click with that provider? And he said, oh, $4.68, which is craziness. That is 3 times the amount he's paying for the same click. Okay. So you can imagine, like, if you go to the auction and somebody offers you a $45,000 car for $15,000, are you going to take the $45,000 because the auction guy's a good guy, a good friend of yours? I don't think so. And you got to think too, like, for $1, okay, it seems like it's only $3. It's only $3 difference. Over 1,000 clicks every month, that's $3,000 difference. Okay, makes a big difference.
Big money, yeah, for
big.
Sure.
And then finally, and this is a major one, takeaway, please, everybody, this is really important, because third-party data is going away. So for first-party data is very important. Upload custom audience segments to Google, YouTube. Okay, use a 500-person minimum list. That'll create lookalikes. It'll better allow you to hyper-target your own database, right? You want to, especially with inventory shortages, you want to advertise to them too, right? You want to say, hey, listen, it might take a couple months for this car to come in. Whatever it is, you're already giving them the messaging, but also you're going to get these similar lookalike audiences to give you more new potential buyers that have these similar traits to customers. So Clarice, those are my 3 takeaways from here. And of course, absolutely near the end, we can chat some more about some of that.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Evan. I saw that Mathew popped his video, or maybe he wants to go early, he's eager. But we do have Madeleine up next. Madeleine, if you don't mind, again, just giving us some context around, you picked Black Hat SEO. I know that you have some additional best practices that you're going to be sharing around website as well, how we can keep those consumer engaged. Just a quick context around why you picked this topic.
Yes. Well, like Ivan mentioned, people right now, when they are shopping for vehicles, they want to know if you have it in stock, and also if you treat me well. There are ways to show this information directly in the search results, in the organic search results, but you need to make sure that you follow Google guidelines when you do that. So there are some techniques, but I want to give you more information about the rightful technique versus the bad techniques.
Awesome. Let's get started.
So first of all, research by Google, 79% of new and used car buyers will use search engines when they are shopping for cars, for vehicles. And what are they looking for? They want to get recommendation or advice. They want to be able to compare vehicles. They want to have information on price, and they want that information quickly. So you need to make sure to optimize your website to address those needs. And you need to make sure also that your website is optimized for search results, since it's the main tool that is used by car buyers. So over the years, Google has changed a lot. It used to be you had a page with just blue links, but now Google is showing what we call enriched search results. With enriched search results, you have a few examples on the right. If, for example, you are looking to know the top 10 SUVs, Google can display a list of the top 10 SUVs directly in the search results. You can also see pictures, videos, ratings, and if you're looking for information on how to do something, there can be a search results that will give you a step-by-step information on how to do this. And this is possible with what we call structured data. So structured data, it's some code that you can put on your website, in the backend of your website, that will allow Google to display your website with enriched search results. Here are a few examples of how a website that is optimized with structured data will show up in the search results with enriched search results. So you are able to display your inventory. You are able to show more information, like if the inventory is in stock, what's the price. You can also display what we call breadcrumbs URL. So it's easier, for your client to go directly to the section on your website that they want to go to. And also, if you create custom content for specific make model, Google will be able to display an enriched description on that page, on the search results. And the benefit of that you will increase the number of clicks to your website because your organic search results will be more attractive. So you will have more people who will click on them. You will stand out from the competition. But if you implement structured data on your website, you need to follow Google guidelines. Some of those guidelines, for example, if you display reviews, recommendations directly in search results, you need to make sure that the reviews and ratings that you mark up are available when someone clicks on that search results. So if you display, 1,000 reviews, and someone click on your page, click on your search results, and when they land on the page, they don't see those reviews anywhere, it goes against Google's guidelines. And also the ratings that you display in the search results must be sourced directly from users. So it needs to come from real users. And if you don't follow those guidelines, you may be penalized by Google. And if you get penalized by Google, your website may drop in the search results, or it may even be completely removed from the search engine. So if you rely on your website to generate most of your business, it would be bad. On the right, you see an example of some search results that goes against Google guidelines. For example, you can see we see everywhere 5-star reviews. We see everywhere 1,000 reviews, whatever the make model, the year, and the dealership. So it's all identical. So it's apparent that it's not real reviews. And when you click on the search result and you land on the page, you won't find those reviews anywhere. So this goes against Google guidelines, and you need to be careful when you do that. Here is a best practice. If you want to display reviews in the search results, make sure those reviews are available directly on the website. Here it's an example. It's on a vehicle's details page. You will see the reviews. And since they are pulled directly from Google My Business, you are certain it comes from real users. So this is a best practice here that we see. For your website, if you want to make sure that it addresses the intent of your buyers and their needs, your clients, they want to get to your inventory quickly in one click. When we do heat mapping studies, what we realize is that most people, when they land on a dealer's website, they will use the main navigation menu, and the two options that are the most often clicked are the ones for inventory, so for used and for new. So you need to make sure to optimize the space, and once a user just make one click on that menu, you need to make sure that your most important inventory is available in one click. Also, if your website provider has the ability to have a quick view button, that will also help your clients get more information quickly about the inventory they are looking for. A quick view button will allow your clients to stay on their search results page of your website and to get more information about a specific stock without quitting the search results page. Also, we know how videos are important now. It's easier to consume content through a video than to read a long description. So when you add videos to your website, you help your clients in getting more information and in creating an emotional connection with them. There are different ways to implement videos on your website. but you need to make sure it's easy to find, that your clients don't have to look for it. If you have video available for your inventory, make sure it's readily available directly from the search results page. So it can be a button. It can also be a click to call action to request a walk around video. And when your client, they go on the details page of the vehicle, make sure also the video is clearly visible, easily accessible through a tab or a video in the description. And price information. Right now, customers have can easily get a lot of information about prices. They can go on marketplaces to compare prices. They can go on the OEM websites. They can see your competitors' website. So that's why you need to provide as much information as possible about pricing. Your clients will love that. And also make sure your website provider gives you the ability to compare vehicles. That will really facilitate the buying process of your clients. When you add click to call buttons, click to call actions buttons on your vehicle's details page and on your search results page, make sure it is aligned with how your clients are shopping for a vehicle. One of the first thoughts that your clients have when they are shopping for a vehicle, they want to know if it's within their budget. So they want to know, to be able to calculate their payments. It's one of the first questions they will be asking to themselves. So if you make your main call to action, calculate your payments, you are aligned with at the stage that your clients are at. So you will generate more click, more engagement. You can also add secondary call to actions that will match the customer journey. So other questions your clients will ask, if they are ready if they are advanced customer, they may want to buy online. However, if they are still in the more traditional process of buying a vehicle, they may want to be able to book a test drive or to take an in-person appointment. So you need to make sure to know your customer base and to adjust your click to call action on your VDPs to align with your customer base.
Well, thank you, Madeline. Wow, CTAs, always the big debate about CTAs. That was excellent. By the way, I better hope if you have a Rolls-Royce Ghost for like 600,000, there better be a video available. Well, thank you, Madeline. That was awesome. Obviously, great, lots of information. Thank you again. Key takeaways. I know you have 3 here. Maybe you want to run through those?
Yes. So if you want to know if your website is eligible for enriched search results, there's actually a free tool that you can use online that is called Schema Markup Testing Tool. So you just need to do a Google search for this. And then if you want to test if your website provider can give you enriched search results, just go on a vehicle's detail page of your website, copy the URL and paste it in the testing tool. You will be able to see if your website can dynamically display if your inventory is in stock and the price. So this will really help you to evaluate the technical ability of your website. Also, what is good to have is a heat mapping tool, because different type of customers will shop differently online. Some of them will want to use a search tool on your page, on your website. They will need like a keyword search tool. Others will prefer, to use your main navigation menu. Others will prefer to use big call to action buttons on the home page. So if you implement a heat mapping tool on your website, you will be able to identify your customer preference and then to optimize your website based on the type of options, based on the kind of functionalities that your clients are using when they shop for vehicles. And finally, make sure to have a robust Google Analytics in place. It's possible to configure your analytics platform to be able to measure the number of clicks per calls to actions. So if you know on your vehicle's details page which type of calls to action is the most often clicked and which ones are the least often clicked, you will be able to adjust them, to refine them, and to really optimize your merchandising, your inventory, your click to call buttons based on what your customer prefer. So it's very important to have proper data, proper analytics.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Madeline. That was excellent. Lots of great information on that one. And of course, a few questions did come in and we will answer them at the end of the session. Also, quick reminder too, we will absolutely 100% be sharing the deck and video as well for you guys. We had a session last week and they got it. I know a lot of times, you know, they say they're going to share, but they're not, but we actually really will. Okay. Next up is the headline speaker of the day, Mathew Growden, who it's a special week for Mathew Growden because Wyatt and Willie has predicted spring. However, early spring. However, I know we have some Nova Scotia Maritimes folks on the line, and Shubenacadie Sam predicted they're disagreeing this year. So we'll see who wins between the two of them because they say winter for a long time. But without further ado, it's great to have you, Mathew, on for us. You were here with us last year and you're here again. And by all means, take it away.
Awesome. Thanks, Simon. Is my screen coming through okay? The thumbnail looks weird, but I don't know if that's just the thumbnail.
Small town nerd from Wyerton, is that?
It's good. You're good. All the colors are good. Yeah. So big week for my hometown. Groundhog Week. You know, they're going to be doing a lot of celebrating. Early spring. Let's be honest, they probably made that up. But I do think Willie's accuracy is, you know, when you're predicting the future, right, you don't always get it right. That's the problem. That's like you talk to any weather person, any meteorologist, it's a challenge, real challenge.
Sure.
But is there a new message there? No, that's it. Yeah, so I grew up in the small town of Wyerton. It's tough to be a nerd in a small town, but eventually you grow up and things are okay. You get a job at Google and you move on. Been at Google in Canada now for 7 years, which blows my mind a little bit. All that time in our automotive ad sales team, now predominantly working in the dealer space. And COVID really gave me an excuse to become a bird watcher. My father was a bird watcher. It does mean that, you know, I've found myself doing the Google search for like best binoculars for birding, which I never thought I would do. But, you know, when you're looking for an answer to a question, this is where you're going to go. This is how you're going to do it. I love getting outside when I'm not sitting here behind my desk, behind the screen, behind this camera, and presenting to folk like you. I am probably out in the wilderness somewhere. And that appears to be true for a large number of Canadians. So in our COVID lives, where we can't travel much internationally and where, especially here in Ontario, we've been in various states of lockdown on and off for the last 2 years. When you look at the driving patterns for Canadians, you see some really interesting things. First off, you see those two big pink spikes, the big pink curve, that's our driving to and from parks. And so as soon as weather gets good in Canada, wherever you are, it seems like when we can't get anywhere else, we like to go out to parks, whether it's day trips or camping or cottages or whatnot. Parks are a big deal. At the bottom, that purple line is driving to transit stations. So since the beginning of COVID in 2020 to now, the fall off on people going to, whether it's subway stations, commuter train stations, what have you, it's reduced pretty substantially. And then that second line from the bottom is people driving to and from workplaces, which is also decreased pretty substantially by 30 or 40%, depending on where we are at in the state of lockdown in different parts of the country. And that is really interesting, has some super fascinating implications for our industry, which I'm not sure are always obvious to people. The consultancies like to talk about kilometers driven in great detail as a bit of a bellwether or canary in the mine shaft of where the industry is going. We look at some other data, some data from Stats Canada. This number, 32% of Canadians employed between the ages of 15 and 69, now working most of their hours from home, right? So it's this material shift in a pretty large population in Canada now pretty much permanently working from home. And working from home is working online, which means these people are now only really reachable through online sources. It means that this segment of the population is not commuting to work with the same frequency that they did previously. And it kind of represents this socioeconomic shift or experiment that we don't really know and fully understand what the outcome of, right? We don't know how that's going to play out, but we can make some assumptions. Some assumptions are that it's having an impact to the overall frequency of service. If I'm not driving as much, then I don't need that oil change. I'm not going back to the dealership. It changes my insurance needs. I may have been a 2 or 3 car family before, but maybe I don't need all those vehicles on the road all of the time. It's shifted the vehicle lifespan equation in a way we don't fully understand yet, and it may have implications for lease renewals and vehicle replacement. Having said that, there's still upside. So there's kind of, on one side, there's this population of people who are driving less and commuting less. On the other side, overall interest in vehicles continues to go up. So we've seen already, and this is a bit of the miracle of small numbers in this data year to date, but year to date, we're up over 9% increase on what was already in 2020 and 2021, some of the highest increases in query volume for automotive that I've seen in the 7 years that I've been at Google. So the interest in vehicle shopping keeps going up. Why is that? Part of it is, we have more spare time and we're probably searching for these things. But the other part is that COVID created, and you've seen this in our research and other people's research, it's brought up by a lot of different folk, an entire new audience of people, a bunch of new first-time car buyers that needed a vehicle relative to COVID. If they're not going to transit stations, if they're not, using subways, commuter trains, etc., then there are still needs to get around. I still need to get my kid to and from school or to and from his basketball practice. I still need to get out to Costco, to wherever, to do my big box shopping, and I still need a vehicle to get out to our beautiful Canadian parks. So some segment of consumers, whether they are previous, millennials that were deferring their purchase who are now active in market, or folk like myself that only had one vehicle and went out to buy a second vehicle, there's been this also material increase in people wanting to own new vehicles, more vehicles. Kind of, at the same time, supply has been a problem. Not really news to any of you, but profit per vehicle sold is not. Right, is not a problem. If we kind of reflect on that, although there's a whole magnitude of issues related to global supply chain, probably the most material one is the shortage of semiconductors and microprocessors. You'd probably not heard of the Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing Company, or TSMC, before all of this happened. It was one of the biggest companies in the world you had never heard of, but they are one of Taiwan's largest companies. They do represent nearly 70% of the production of microprocessors in vehicles today, and they continue to grow. They continue to grow. They're dumping literally tens of billions into expansion and new production every year, and so it's going to be hard to keep up with them. They're also now focused on a lot of other industries, but this is not an automotive-specific problem, right? This is also, if you've been shopping for a PlayStation or an Xbox for yourself or for your family, you've probably experienced the same thing. But this is what's really slowing down the production of vehicles globally. Having said that, it's had to change. It's forced a change in how we sell to people. And the truth is, many consumers are willing to wait, right? The more expensive the vehicle, the more likely a person is actually willing to wait. And they're willing to wait about 3 months. So 67% of those who are willing to wait feel pretty comfortable waiting 3 months. So there is kind of a way forward as we move more towards factory ordering, as we move more to online sales and pre-order type solutions. People are willing to wait. They are adapting to this change in the ecosystem, and it does have some other implications for how we sell vehicles. Another pretty material change in our data, something that didn't really exist previously, was that out of all of the purchase factors, or the reasons why someone would buy a new vehicle, in 2021, reliability became the #1 factor. And again, I think that goes back to those other 2 points about this new audience of people and the need that COVID created for vehicles related to them feeling safe in their vehicles, right? So, and if I want to feel safe, I want to make sure that that vehicle is going to get me from point A to point B, that the reliability is there. The other factor that was kind of new and emerged here that connects both that COVID safety factor to our love of parks is four-wheel drive or all-wheel drive. So number 3 at 26%. So some interesting changes in why we want to buy and how we want to buy related to COVID, reliability and four-wheel drive. When we talk about the kind of online purchase curve and the fact that, you know, a couple of years ago, not many vehicles were sold online. BCG did this research towards the end of 2020, beginning of 2021. They likened online car sales to the sale of some other big box, large purchase items like furniture or appliances, and said those were segments of online shopping that were kind of late to the party. And they started slow in the early 2000s at maybe 0.5%, 1% of those transactions happening online. And then over this kind of 15-year curve, they got to about 30, 35% of those transactions happening online, and projected a very similar fate for automotive, saying that, you know, starting around the year 2020, when things started to get real at the beginning of COVID, we had about 0.5% to 1% of vehicles being sold online, and then we project that over, you know, the same kind of curve. It gets us to 2035 when things get also really interesting with the changes for EVs here in Canada. We look at our consumer data and we ask people about these same questions. We've known there's been interest in online vehicle sales. It's kind of always been there. It's grown slowly over the last few years and spiked quite abruptly at the beginning of COVID. You know, this number was over 70% because it was the only way you might be able to buy a vehicle online, and that was online. But then it kind of leveled out, and as things normalized and things kind of got back to normal over the summers of the last few years, it tapered out back around 53%. Still huge considering, you know, that kind of 20 to 30% of transactions happening for those other large ticket items or in other omni-channel retail. And again, our own data back in 2019, we saw 1% of vehicles being sold online, and then this past year, in 2021, that number climbing 6x to miracle small numbers again, but a 600% increase to 6% of vehicles being sold online in Canada. And that is a pretty rapid acceleration relative to what BCG was projecting. Don't know yet if that's going to hold. Don't have enough data to actually say it's trending and going to grow and get us to that 30% a lot faster than what BCG was saying. But we do know that at least in the first lap, in the first year of this journey of online vehicle sales, it's growing a lot faster than anyone would have expected. When you kind of look at what are the opportunities both for OEMs and for an individual dealership, how they can capitalize on this interest, on this shift to more of an omni-channel solution, there are really kind of out of the gate 4 areas that are of concern, and places where either the OEM has a vested interest or does not have a vested interest in that transaction. So number 1 being new vehicle sales. Right now, that's a bit of a shared responsibility, right? I think right now, if you're a sole dealership or an auto group, you could launch your own new vehicle sales, or whether that's, you know, digital retailing, e-com, whatever you want to call it. You could create an omni-channel experience that addresses that. I think as time goes on, OEMs are going to have more to say about that. And we see that shift already happening in Europe with some of the move to the agency model and other online platforms that are being built. It really seems like new vehicle sales is going to slowly become more of something the OEMs concern themselves with, especially as they collide with, or that opportunity collides with, the launch of new electric vehicles. Parts is kind of not an area the OEMs have really jumped on, and so this is squarely an opportunity for the dealer to launch an e-commerce site to sell parts online. Used, OEM doesn't really care about your used vehicle sales unless it's CPO, and even then I'm not sure how much they care. OEM to OEM, so used is an area where a dealer can capitalize on that. And F&I, something that's kind of untouched, a space that really still emerging. Interesting news in the last week or so with Ford in the US making a global partnership with Stripe to talk about how they might evolve their payment and transaction ecosystem, but still pretty much an untapped experience for both the OEM and the dealer, and probably huge opportunity both for my initial purchase, for additional services, for upgrades to my vehicle, service plans, extended warranty, etc., all the full gamut of existing and future potential opportunities for F&I. I did a podcast back in the fall as part of Think Auto. I interviewed two dealers, friends of mine now, I would say. One was Brian Benstock from Paragon Honda. The other was Jeremy Kosh from Kosh Ford in Edmonton. One of the things that, if you listen to him, if you listen to that podcast or listen to other podcasts and other videos that Brian is in, he likes to use this phrase a lot, since it's Brian saying this, not me, but he's like, dealers aren't investing in the future because currently they're in a profit coma, that this current ecosystem, this sort of environment where there's a scarcity of vehicles and people are buying and putting down money in advance of actually receiving their vehicle and waiting for 3 months or longer to get that vehicle, and where profitability is the highest it's been in memory, there doesn't seem like there's a need to invest in technology. And Brian called out the fact that, well, this set of circumstances isn't going to last forever, and we need to be prepared to meet those consumer needs. We need to be in a place where, if the consumer is expecting this omni-channel purchase experience, that we're there and we're servicing them that way. The first real battlefront for online car sales is in used, right? And we see this in the kind of startup space here in Canada and the US, as well as the platforms and the experiences that some of the larger auto groups are mounting. This is not a comprehensive assessment of what's going on in the space. There are many other players, many other experiences being built right now, but just as a bit of a survey of what's going on in that space, you see both Clutch and Canada Drives have raised pretty substantial capital, both raising about $100 million Canadian each in the last year to accelerate their own growth and tap into the interest of Canadians who want to buy vehicles online. And in the center here, we have an example of a piece of video creative talking about an online buying experience that was launched by AutoIQ. So just, again, not a comprehensive list of what's going on, but really a survey of what's going on in the space right now. And I think it's just going to heat up. There was some movement from Kirby and that operation not really succeeding, I believe, and lots of other stuff happening in this space, something that we're going to watch real closely over the next year or two as it expands. But as we consider, this whole notion of buying vehicles online, my team and many people externally, many calls I get, emails, requests for information I get, all center around, how do we do this? What does it look like? How do we talk to these consumers? How do we let them know we have this capability? And then people remember that, oh yeah, didn't you work in e-commerce before you worked at Google? And I'm like, yeah, for nearly 20 years, I worked in consumer digital businesses, e-commerce businesses, many of them and so I do have some opinions about that. I do have some stories to tell, and so this next set of slides kind of quickly summarizes that. And so the first is, I got my real start in e-commerce back in 1999. I partied like it was 1999 at Chapters Indigo, and back then, much of the retail business was not happy about what we were doing. There was some severe channel conflict. They saw us as competition, not as a competitive edge at the time. And so the people who I interacted with on the retail side of the business would say things to me like, that's not how people buy books. People don't want to buy books online, which today sounds ludicrous, but it's what we heard a lot from the book people back in 1999. And you fast forward a number of years, and now there's a company, I won't tell you who it is, you can guess, but they now sell more books online than any bookstore chain in the history of the world. Right? They have a market cap of almost $1.5 trillion and are one of the largest retailers on the planet. Right? So that changed pretty materially, and the book people had to change their tune with it. Many years later, I helped launch a telco in Canada, I got a job at Wind Mobile, and I ran the digital operation at Wind Mobile for a number of years, now Freedom Mobile. And when I started there, many of the people I worked with, even the people that were hired to work with me at Wind Mobile, who came from the other telcos, Rogers, TELUS, and Bell, and they said, that's not how people buy phones. Like everyone wants the experience, right? In the bookstore, it's like, well, I want to go to the bookstore, I want to walk around and buy my coffee, I want to have that experience, was what the book people said. And then the telco people were like, people want the experience. You want to walk into the Rogers store? And I was like, I don't think that's actually true. But regardless, it was very common for all the telco folk back in 2009, 10 years later, to say, that's not how people buy phones. And then you fast forward 10 years, and now there's a company, I won't tell you who it is. They sell more phones online than any company in the history of the world, and have a $2.6 trillion market cap, and really have cornered the market, really have taught us all a thing or two about this whole omnichannel experience. And so phone companies have had to change their tune, and the phone industry has had to wake up to this reality. And then you look at today, and you look at many meetings I'm in, many dealers I've spoken with over the last few years. I know this is changing a lot and rapidly, but being like, that's not how people buy vehicles. They don't buy vehicles online. They want the experience. They want to come into the dealership and drink our mediocre coffee. They want to talk to my salespeople. That's the experience people want, isn't it? Well, that's what the car people have been saying to me for a number of years. And then you just kind of look down the road and you realize that every Tesla that has been sold started with an online transaction. Nearly $1 billion market cap. It was over $1 billion last year. Now, thanks to the market shifts in the last few weeks, less than $1 billion, or less than, sorry, was $1 trillion, now less than $1 trillion, 941 billion market cap. Also has sold more vehicles online than any car manufacturer in the history of the world. Is food for thought, right? Food for thought. Also food for thought is the fact that every new EV OEM, every new manufacturer, Rivian, Canoo, whoever it is, they are digital first companies, right? All of their sales, even among their dealer networks, mirroring that Tesla model, right? Where there's a platform, a tool set that allows a consumer to begin that transaction online and then walk into one of the showrooms and complete it there, or just walk in and they hand them a tablet and they begin it on that tablet on a digital tool and then complete it there. The digital tool, same thing, right? It doesn't matter to them the same way it doesn't matter to Apple whether or not you buy the iPhone online or buy it at an Apple store or buy it elsewhere. Let's put a pin in that thought for a minute. Let's talk about the journey and how it's changed, how it's the same. There are some differences, there are some nuances, but many things are still the same. This has grown over the last number of years and is now kind of held here at about the 90% mark. We know that 90% of new car buyers rely on online information while researching their vehicles. That shouldn't be news. If that is news, you haven't seen me present before. This has been the case for the last number of years. When we look at what the sources used are, that has shifted and continues to shift. And so in this slide, I picked everything that was 30% or higher, split out the online and the offline sources. So on average, people using about 5 online sources during the journey, using about 2 or exposed to about 2 offline sources during the journey. What are those top sources? On the digital side, number 1 is search. Number 2 is online video. Number 3, the online or the OEM website. Number 4, the digital dealer experience, the dealer website, and then review or comparison sites. In the offline world, what are the offline top sources? Well, it's a dealer visit, a test drive, or an interaction with a salesperson at a dealership. And if I were going to be real frank with you all, aren't those all the same? Aren't all 3 of those, regardless of how the consumer identified it, really the dealership experience, rounding out top 1, 2, and 3 of the offline sources used? 3 out of 4 people discover their vehicle online. So again, this is pretty new. This was again a growing number, but now 75%, 3 out of 4 people being exposed for the first time to that vehicle through digital experiences during the research process. This has been a shifting tide of numbers, one that's kind of interesting, where the journey 7 or 8 years ago when I started at Google, we kind of had this theory that digital tools were shortening the journey, and so people used to take 30 to 60 days before they bought a vehicle, and then that kind of shortened to 45 days. And we said, well, it's because now they have all these digital tools and they can answer these questions faster. And so the journey is getting compressed. And then the journey got longer again. Like then it took people longer, and that was really a paradox of choice problem where they had too much information, they had too many tools and sources to use, and so it expanded again. But now in the COVID world, where people are online, working from home and in front of their computers more often, it's compressed again, it's shortened again. So 38% of people bought their car in less than 2 weeks, 18% bought it in less than 1 week. The majority of people, 59%, spent less than 1 month to make a decision. So these are some material shifts, and it's really a reflection, I think, of how we spend our time, and that we're able to shorten our own journey because we've got the opportunity to do this research and come to a decision faster than we were able to previously. Video, just one slide on video, but it's got a whole bunch of numbers on it. So more of a going concern in the journey. 65% of buyers using online video as part of their research for a new vehicle. 68% of those folk who looked at a video followed up with a lower funnel action, right? They went to a dealer website, they went for more information, they went looking for leasing and financing information, etc., or went to contact a dealership. So it's becoming a larger part of the journey and part of the lower funnel of the journey, not just a branding top of the funnel, tofu, as people like to call it, part of the journey. YouTube at the same time has just exploded in almost a mind-boggling way during COVID. And so this 13 million Canadians number, that's just the Canadians who watch YouTube every month on their television. So in addition to all of the viewership, that the millions upon millions of Canadians that watch YouTube on their laptop or desktop or tablet or phone, 13 million Canadians now watching YouTube on their actual television and spending about 2.5 hours a day on the platform. And so the opportunity for you, a dealership on YouTube, is now material. It's now huge. What's going on at dealership? Well, a bunch of different things. Some things we're again familiar with, some things I think we're not familiar with. So how do I decide what dealership I'm actually going to buy from? Well, this has remained pretty constant the last 2 or 3 years. Its price and its availability, right? So do you have the vehicle I'm looking for, or can you get it? And what am I going to pay? These are the number one, number two decision points for the consumer as to who they are going to buy from, followed by I might have purchased or leased from you previously at 23%, or you were convenient, you were within a reasonable distance of my home or my work. People really still not enjoying being pressured into sale or upsell. So what are the things that are inconveniences at a dealership? 40% attempts to sell unwanted services. That's something people don't want. Pressure from the salesperson, having to deal with multiple people. That's an annoyance. Lack of overall pricing transparency. Again, what am I going to pay? Too much time spent waiting. Like, why is this taking so long? I thought I bought my vehicle. Why isn't it being delivered today? Why do I have to wait 3 days, 3 months, 6 months? Time spent shopping and negotiating, right? These are all inconveniences at a dealership. If we can reduce these inconveniences, then people are going to be more satisfied with their overall dealership experience. How many dealership visits are people making? Well, on the average, it's 1 or 2. It's 1.9, so it's gone up a bit. I think that's because people really wanted to get out of their houses during COVID, like myself. So where it had dropped down to 1.4 in 2020, it popped up to 1.9 in the average. But it's still, the majority of people are only going to one dealership. Some number of people doing 2 dealership visits, and some doing 3 or more. So, but the majority of folk just doing 1 or 2. Same with test drives, really mirroring that same pattern. On average 1.7, and that actually remained the same. So 1.7 in 2021, same in 2022 or in 2020. On average, the majority of people doing 1, it's 54%, and then some number of people doing 2 or 3. Transparency and information, clarity of information, really core challenges and questions for the consumer on both OEM and dealer websites. Like, how do I see what I'm going to pay? How do I manage my financing options? Is it easy to compare different vehicles? Are there excellent digital customer care and service tools and information available online? Is all of the information regarding production and delivery easy to find? Like, is this new vehicle actually available? When will I get the vehicle that I purchased? Those are questions people have. Is it easy to make an appointment to actually go see that vehicle or do the test drive? And is there smooth handling throughout the whole purchase using digital tools? Probably not. This I find interesting, a slide I spent a lot of time talking about over the last couple of years. But in the last year, overall walk-ins dropped 7%. Not a surprise. Many places in the country we couldn't get out to dealership, or with whole hesitancy around COVID, people just not leaving home again. If they are leaving their home, going to parks. Phone calls, super interesting, up 11% year over year, and it is the piece of advice I give when asked, like, what is the one thing I should be doing at my dealership? And I often say it's not the answer people expect from the guy at Google, and the answer I give is answer the damn phone. So becoming a larger concern, was already a big concern, and is a source of hot leads, followed by an increase in overall email, SMS, and online chat, some reductions in online forum use, social media, and new this year, video call, right? So the extending of video options straight into the dealership, whether you're using a purpose-built tool for that, or just using, an existing Teams, Meet, Zoom, or Hangout, or what's the word I'm looking for? Whatever it is on Apple, which I can't remember right now. Drawing a blank. Guess I don't use my iPhone anymore. What's going on in Google Ads? Well, a lot has changed. I haven't talked about core search, so I won't spend a lot of time on core search, but we've got a whole new set of products. Some you might be familiar with, some, even the ones you are familiar with, have changed or expanded in the last year and a half. The first thing we talk about, right, is that machine learning is now core to all of our products, right? And you use it every day, whether you know it or not. So whether you're talking to the Google Assistant, whether you're looking at traffic predictions and trying to get a sense of when am I going to get across the city in Google Maps, online fraud detection that is used in a bunch of places, delivery estimates. There's machine learning is everywhere. YouTube Up Next recommendations and YouTube Music playlist recommendations. The capability is now being unlocked and deployed pretty much everywhere within Google's tools and services, whether they're ads related or not. The first kind of ad specific thing, though, I'm going to talk about is optimization score. Talked a lot about it over the last 2 years. Really the answer to the question, how do I know if my agency is doing a good job, or how do I know if they're doing all of the right things? And so it is this single score, a ranking between 1 and 100, just like an old school test you might have taken, that lets you know the overall kind of barometer or health of the account. It's instant. It's constantly being updated in the account. It's personalized to your account and your goals. So if your Google account is set up with the conversions for leads and phone calls and digital retailing starts and completes, if those are the goals, or whatever combination of those goals are the conversions in your account, this set of recommendations and the scoring mechanism is all built around getting you more of those same leads, conversions, and actions. The recommendations are also then broken down into things that are pretty easy to do, actionable, and scalable. So what is new, however, is we did this exhaustive, I'm getting ahead of myself. It adds up a bunch of things within your account. So it looks at bids and budgets, ads and extensions, repairs, things that are just broken that need to get fixed, your keywords, your targeting, and how much you've deployed automation, which is something I haven't talked a lot about. But the thing that is new in optimization score is we ran this really exhaustive analysis of literally tens of thousands of Google Ads accounts in North America, and we learned what we hoped was already true, and that's that if you shift optimization score by 10 points, so if you go from 60 to 70, or 70 to 80, or 80 to 90, or 90 to 100, which is really hard to do, but if you can shift your overall optimization score by 10 points, the net result is you'll get a 14% increase in your overall conversions, right? So that's 14% more leads, phone calls, and other actions that you may want out of your ads investment. Second is video action campaigns. And so often, although we have a bunch of video tools, that you can use for advertising purposes, when we are recommending what to use to, say, a dealer or even folk at tier 2, more often than not now we recommend video action campaigns, which is a purpose-built version of our TrueView skippable format that has call to actions built into the video, right? To make it really easy for you to get people out of the YouTube experience and over to whatever other experience you have, web experience, app experience, right? So out of YouTube and over to your own website. So really it's, again, using machine learning to identify who are the people who might do that action, and then making those call to actions very obvious when the video is being played and when the video is completed, making YouTube that much more actionable. This case study, and it's the thing that people ask, are like, well, I get that YouTube is a great brand play, and I get that its scale has changed, and it's probably useful for a dealership, but does it really work at the sole proprietor dealership level or in a small auto group? And the answer to that is yes. And this was a perfect storm test from this dealership from Finch Nissan in London, Ontario, where at the time that they ran this campaign, they weren't running any other media. So it was like a perfect test control scenario where the only media they had in market was YouTube. It was the only way anyone could hear about this particular offer. They were hoping they could clear out a couple of their year-end Nissan Kicks, and they ended up selling all of them. So the net result was a 1,600% return on investment, pretty impressive, nearly 10,000 video impressions, and the attraction of nearly 39 hours of watch time on what was a pretty modest investment in YouTube, not a huge amount of dollars at the end of the day. One of the other things I will tell you, and probably the best, least used feature of YouTube for an individual dealer, is that now, if you didn't already know this, you can add your location extension, the one you rely on in Google search already to drive people or show people where your business is, or to get more phone calls out of your ads, and you can deploy that right on Google, or sorry, on YouTube within your video. So it actually shows up below the video when the video plays, and then they can click on it and they can actually map to get driving directions straight to your dealership. So again, if you're looking to get more phone calls and drive more people into store and you're running video campaigns, then maybe consider adding the video location extension to that campaign. Discovering campaigns, again, not a new product, a product that has been evolving, changed a bit over the last few years, improved overall in performance, and a tactic that a lot of dealers who've tested it out are having great success with in driving incremental leads. It shows up on the Discover feed. The Discover feed, a little easier to find on Android than it is on iOS, but it's there in the Google app on iOS as well. Also displays and featured in the YouTube feed and in Gmail. So interesting in its placement, reaching into places you might not otherwise be advertising or may not have access to if you're only doing kind of standard video display and search and social. It also uses creative that you might have already created for other social channels like Instagram and Facebook. You can drop that creative straight into a discovery campaign and use it again. So there's no creative burden, there's no creative costs or incremental creative costs. It allows you to extend that social creative into the Google ecosystem. And another automotive example from the US with BF Goodrich, overall, what's the punchline here? 30 times more leads and an 88% reduction in the cost per lead. So may not see exactly this, your mileage may vary, may not see the same results, but probably some amount of increase in leads and some amount of reduction in the cost per conversion, even if you deploy this locally at your own dealership. Local campaigns, something again, when I'm telling people about that whole, increase in phone calls and answer your phone kind of conversation, when I'm going down that conversational line, I recommend local campaigns. Local campaigns, a way again to use our machine learning capabilities to squarely find the people who will visit your business or do a local action, local actions being make a phone call to your business or request driving directions to your business. They show up basically everywhere in the Google ecosystem. So on YouTube, Maps, Display, Search, the business profile, and in Gmail. You'll see a trend here. And out of that, you can drive pretty impressive incremental phone call conversions. And so this was something we tested out with the folk at Kosh Ford on their Lincoln business last year. What did they find, right? So like a lot of people with a luxury brand really struggling to find who their audience was and how to get incremental leads, well, they were able to actually drive a 57% increase in new site visitors with this local campaign tactic. The net result was nearly a 4,000% increase in overall impressions throughout their Google Ads account, a 14 times increase in conversion, and a 75% reduction in the cost per conversion. So, or cost per new site visitor, sorry. So again, similar thread, using machine learning, using these new automated campaign types, pretty impressive performance across the board. And last, Performance Max, our newest and most powerful of these campaign types, again, built on the backbone of machine learning, again, using every available platform that Google has to run ads on. So across YouTube, Display, Search, I sound like a broken record a little bit, right? Discover Feed, Gmail, and Maps. These Performance Max campaigns, what do they do? Well, they drive performance to give you as many of the goals, the conversions, that it possibly can. And it does that everywhere. So regardless of what your conversion is, what your objective is with your campaign, whether it's leads, whether it's phone calls, whether it's, you know, submitting lead forms on your own website, or driving those digital retail purchase interactions, Performance Max is a way to get there. What have we seen in Performance Max campaigns? Well, for folk who include this in their Google Ads account alongside the other tactics they're already running, what we're seeing is about a 13% additional increase in conversions at about the same or lower cost per conversion relative to other campaigns that they are running. So what does that mean? It means Performance Max performs nearly as well or better than search in almost all cases. And this is a case study from a dealer in the US, Port Richley, I think that's how you say that. What's the punchline? 194% increase in account conversions, 520% increase in conversion rates, and a 61% decrease in cost per conversion. So if you are looking, I've never met a dealer who isn't looking for more leads or conversions, but if you are looking for more leads and conversions, and if you're looking to do that at a lower cost per conversion, then maybe you want to consider some of these new campaign types. What are my key takeaways, right? So number one, COVID and this working from home experience have really reshaped customer needs for vehicles in a few different ways. We saw that, right? And then on one side, maybe there's an impact to our service business because people are not driving the same number of kilometers they were driving previously, but it also created this entirely new group of people, this entirely new audience of people who needed to buy a vehicle so that they felt safe. That omni-channel retail is the new normal for the industry, or this real combination, however it pans out, of digital experience and in-person retail, right? Mirroring what has been common in other retail verticals, other retailers like Best Buy and Apple and others. The digital sources are the majority of the sources used during the research process, and that search and video are number one and number two. And that machine learning and automation present many new opportunities for both dealers and OEMs to reach new customers.
Nice, Matthew. Thank you. Yes, I like that machine learning and automation. At the end, seems to be the buzzword. There was a couple questions actually. And I did want to at least address them because they're pretty good. One of them comes from Marcel Potier, who
Hi, Marcel.
Tusket Ford out in beautiful Yarmouth, Nova Scotia. Thank you for attending again, Marcel. Seems to be on our podcast or webinar quite a bit. So his question is, do the 6% of folks who purchased online in 2021 include those who began the purchase online and completed the transaction in the dealership, or only those who completed the transaction end-to-end without entering a dealership?
So Marcel, it's actually hard to know. I think because it is a survey, and because, how do I articulate, how do I explain that I bought my vehicle online? I think it's probably a combination of both. I also think it includes all of the people who took advantage of all of those new businesses that have emerged that kind of capitalize on the used side of the equation. So the Clutches, the Kirby's, the Canada Drives of the world, as well as all of the services that have been mounted by auto groups. So I have to believe it's a bit of a mix, and that, even, for instance, if I was going to go buy a new television today and I wanted to buy it from Best Buy, I might buy it online, but I might still hop in my car and drive up to, the stockyards and pick it up in person. And that's still an online transaction, isn't it? So regardless of how the delivery and the final paperwork, where the paperwork is signed, either at home or at the dealership, I think it's more the shift. And I think as time goes on, that shift lends itself to the complete process going more online and shifting and being more wholesomely a digital transaction.
Awesome, cool. Well, thanks for the questions, guys. Keep them coming in. Thanks again, Mathew. By the way, thank you for Traffic was just rewarded a Google Premier Partner for 2022. Thank you very much for that distinctive honor.
I don't get to issue those myself, but I guess you're welcome. Cool. That's also like me taking credit for the early spring from the groundhog.
Yeah, right.
You're responsible for a lot. I like that Marcel Potier question about beginning to purchase online, because now we're moving over to the digital retailing tools. I think that a lot of those people think that they're doing, or they're part of that 6% that think they're purchasing online, like you mentioned, Mathew. And so we come to Moto Insights portion with Clarice Kovacs, Director of Product Marketing, and she's going to talk about driving returning customer activity and funnel conversion. Clarice, why did you pick that topic?
Well, I think a lot of dealership invested in different digital retailing tools in the past couple of years. One, because really it was the only way to be able to still engage with consumers and sell cars to them, and also they didn't want to miss out. But I think Mathew had touched on it, that if we think about digital retailing, it's an omni-channel experience, right? Omni-channel is quite overused word right now, and it's actually a sales engagement and conversion tool. So I wanted to talk a lot about how dealerships can leverage their digital retailing tool to drive customers back into that flow and convert them more effectively down the funnel. So I wanted to start with basics first of all. So we're talking about the website experience. So dealerships will invest in a digital retailing tool. We have to make sure that we provide that nice, clear, intuitive experience for consumers on your website, so they can actually find their way into the digital retailing tool. So based on some insights in our platform, we actually did it with the T-Advantage team. We looked at some analysis and understanding what happens when a dealership provides a nice, clear message around this new, modern, differentiated experience that they're offering. So they have a landing page either explaining the different steps that the consumers can complete if they choose to. Some of them will include an actual video on there as well. And wanted to see how they're converting compared to others who don't have anything. So sometimes dealerships will invest in a tool, they enable one button on their website, and they're expecting for this high volume of traffic flow into the flow. That's not the case. We actually see a 60% increase in conversion when educational content is included on the website. So we have to make sure that we have that consistent brand promise and experience across our social efforts, as well as when the consumer lands on the website all the way to the call to action button. So it makes it very clear for consumers on what kind of experience they should be expecting. Now, the other thing on here as well is the intuitive path. So often dealerships will have pop-ups and different conflicting call to action buttons because they want the high lead volume ultimately to drive those opportunities for themselves. The only thing with that is that we're actually diluting the quality of those opportunities. So providing a clear path for consumers and removing some of that clutter will actually drive up the quality of those prospects, will convert at a much higher rate. Ivan mentioned at the beginning that actually with the integration and in our partnership, we actually have the ability to bring customers back into the flow. So think about consumers being on your website, they potentially found a vehicle that they're interested in, and they're a little bit closer further down in the funnel. So they know they want to interact with you, but they want to understand what kind of commitment, overall commitment they'll be facing. So let's say they put into Google search the specific make model that they're interested in, but they add payments. So they're actually a little bit deeper in the funnel. So with the integrations, and you have the ability, please leverage that, you actually have the ability to capture that customer and versus bringing them back to your website to actually drive them into the digital retailing flow. And why that's beneficial, because then the customer is in their own personalized environment where you have the ability to understand where they are in the purchase, they configure their payment. We see that 70% of consumers who land in the flow will configure the payment. So right away, you know what their budget is, what terms that they're looking for. Or you actually have the ability, if you have a stacked environment for consumers who want to understand what their budget is based on their trade value, to actually drive them into the trade flow first, and from them seamlessly transition them into the buying experience. So if you have those integrations available to them, use them as part of your retargeting, because those consumers who do come back, they do more actions. And why would you do that? So we talked a lot about average industry closing ratios. So we look at your web lead closing ratios in the industry is around 10%. Some dealerships will be slightly higher. I know that some of them might be lower as well. With digital retailing prospects, we see an average 21% closing ratio. So as mentioned, right away, instantly, you're getting higher quality prospects. If you actually want to increase that closing ratio, we see that with our super users, and I'll talk a little bit about what a super user is, those closing ratios go up to 38%. And at 38%, what that means is that you're being more effective in the conversion and more efficient in the process as well. And a super user is really a dealership who recognizes the power of a platform that can help them be more effective in that sales transaction. So we're not saying change the way you sell cars, but make it more modern. Like, let's level it up and bring that modern experience that consumers been experiencing all of the retail sectors, as we've shown before, for the past 25 years. We finally have the ability to actually shine in our industry and bring that back to consumers in the car shopping journey. Now, we talked about omnichannel. I still get the question asked, what is omnichannel? So omnichannel is really the consumer has the ability to seamlessly transition between channels. So I could be online, then I'm in person interacting, and the experience is consistent. So the omnichannel experience is not going to happen if you just offer it to your website traffic. So Mathew actually mentioned when we talked about phoning clients. So you'll have consumers calling in, inquiring about a vehicle. You have the ability with digital retailing tools to actually use the outbound. So you have the customer on the phone, create a shopping cart for them with the vehicles of their interest, where they can actually compare different options, different payment terms. And the great thing about that is that if the consumer goes into the environment, you'll be notified right away. So that means your follow-up can be prompt and relevant. It's the same with your walk-in clients. So how many consumers might walk in with, so it's like 77%, they're walking unannounced, but they may not be ready to close that day. So versus giving them, I don't know, a business card or a printout window sticker, inviting them into this new modern experience is not only going to bring convenience to them, but it's also efficiency and effectiveness to your team as well. So we really just need to get that buy-in from the team so they understand what we can do and how we can leverage the tools that we have in our toolkit. So I wanted to bring up a good example of a bad example, a real scenario. Actually, one of my team members were looking to purchase a car the back end of last year. They found the vehicle that they wanted, the dealership they wanted to purchase it from. And she said to me, "Oh, they actually one of our customers." So what she did, she configured her payment terms within the tool and booked an appointment within the platform. Then she got an email from the dealership asking her when she would like to come in. On the same day, she actually got a phone call from the BDC team asking when she would be able to come in for a test drive. So right away, we can see that the experience, it was broken. So right out of the gate. So that's why it's important when you're investing in these tools to do that pre-work to understand where is the consumer at in their journey and where do we need to guide them next, because that's what's going to enable us to provide a seamless omni-channel experience that we've been talking about. So really to drive the returning customer activity, prompt and relevant follow-up, understanding where they're at, where do we need to take them next. The message is personalized based on where we need to guide them to and what additional steps. And if you have it available within your toolkit, use the transactional shortcut links to get the consumer to complete additional steps online. Because if they return to the tool, they will be spending more time in there and they will do more activities. So we can see when dealerships leveraging their tool outbound, meaning that they're sharing links to specific transactional steps or creating a shopping cart for the consumer and inviting them into the environment, 1 in 5 consumers will actually return. And when they return, 19% of them will complete additional steps. And we can see the time spent in the platform doubles, triples sometimes as well. And if you have to think about it, the consumers spend a little bit more time online. You have to do a little bit more online, but it's going to make you a lot more efficient when it comes to closing that deal in the dealership. Our super users, they reported to us that they would be able to cut down the deal finalization from like 2 to 3 hours in the past to 1 hour. So really just leverage these tools to help you really in your business. So I also wanted to look at what does it mean if the customer progresses further in the funnel? How much more likely are they to close with us? And we know that self-serve online completion or consumers going all the way through the funnel is still low. That's why dealerships have to guide consumers. We have to think about it. This is a new experience in the industry. So we have to ensure that consumers actually know what they're able to do. So we mentioned average web lead conversion is 10%. We talked about digital retailing, 21%. Now, if the consumer actually submits their trade-in information, the closing ratio on average, I'm saying, jumps up to 40%. So that means 4 in 10 customers you will get their trade-in and also you'll be able to sell them an additional vehicle. When they complete a credit application, those closing ratios jump up to 61%. And with deposit, it's 80%. So really 8 out of 10 consumers will actually end up purchasing a vehicle. Maybe not that one, but they end up purchasing a specific vehicle from their dealership. So really the key takeaways from my perspective is leverage the tools that you have and in your toolkit and in your back pocket really to really support driving those engaged consumers who have been on your site back into the tool to ensure that they don't go elsewhere, they go deeper in the funnel and you end up closing them. So creating that simple intuitive path for your online shoppers, to me, number one, just look at it from an outsider perspective, quick audit of your website. If you were a consumer the first time and there, could you easily find your way and could you find those call to action buttons that based on the intent that you actually had, and then meet your prospect where they're at. So doing a bit of work and understanding how much information do I have about that consumer, where do I need to take them next, and then guide them to those additional transactional steps will help you become more effective and also more efficient as well.
Well, thank you.
You.
Thank you, Clarice.
You
Yeah,
still have
that
your
was.
hand up, Ivan. You still have your hand up. Raising your hand.
Oh, is it? Sorry.
No, it's all good.
No, I was just going to say, what a great presentation. No, it was. And which seems to be like DR out of all of them is the one that has to be like really worked at the dealership level. Like if you don't get buy-in from the dealership, I know how hard that is. It seems like it's the one that requires the most work from cooperation from them.
Yeah, but again, it's not the enemy, right? Like it's just understanding how it can help you and leveraging that. And it's a little bit of extra work for so much more results. Like that's the key thing about it. And we've seen it, and some dealers will have a champion who will roll with it, and the rest of the team was like, wow, how can I get those kind of results? And others, they implement that process change or process enhancement, should I say, across the rooftop until everyone is comfortable with it. And then that's when they really start seeing those results.
Cool. Well, thank you very much. Keep the questions coming. Keep the questions coming in, everybody. So you're going to get more interaction, of course, if you work it. And then when you get the customer, you want to hold on to them. And so now we have Rui Koto, Business Development Manager from Activix in the Kitchener area. We do have a question from Gary Crosby, who's from the Kitchener area, but we will answer that at the end. He's going to talk about the best customers are the ones you already have. Rui, welcome.
Thanks, Ivan. It's good to be here.
Cool. So best customers are the ones you already have. So what kind of is the reason you chose this topic for today's discussion?
Yeah. So my previous experience at different management levels at a dealership really kind of got me interested in different buying habits that the customers have and how things have evolved over time. And then leaving the dealership world and coming into the more tech side of the automotive world, I've been able to kind of see a connection between the two and how we can merge the two in order to get the best possible outcome when it comes to our current client base.
Cool. All right, let's hear it.
Okay. So just to kick things off, the current dealer average across the board when it comes to renewal customers and retaining that customer is 19%. And that number is fairly low. But as we've all heard this before, the best thing about it being low is that there's nowhere to go but up. And I'm going to go over some best practices based on data that we have and information from some of the top performing dealers, and getting that number up to 28%, which with the higher performing dealers, that's what it typically is. Next slide. So just starting things off really simply is there are lots of tools out there that can make our lives a lot easier. And just right from the very, very bare basics, making sure that your current client base is organized is very, very important. The last thing you want is unassigned customers or orphan customers, because those customers aren't being taken care of, right? And there are systems in place that where you can set specific filters and automations where emails, SMSs are sent out to these customers based on any filters or criteria that you, the dealer, set. Regular follow-up. We're going to touch base on that and why it's important to do regular follow-up with customers that you have already sold to, and some of the things that some dealerships out there right now are doing in order to get their already existing client base to come back and purchase another vehicle from them, not just once, but 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 times down the road. Next slide. Okay, technology. So this one's an interesting one. I wanted to talk about video, because video is nothing new. Video has been around for a very, very long time. But when it comes to the dealership world, it feels like it is something that is new. And especially when it comes to things like video conference. I know that video recording and uploading to YouTube is something that some dealers have been doing for a few years now. And that has improved, that has gotten better. But when it comes to video in general, it seems like something that's still a lot of dealers and a lot of salespeople are hesitant to embrace when it comes to connecting with our customers in that way. With today's climate, it's more important now than ever that we maintain a connection with our current client base, and video really does help us do that, right? So do something like record a video of that new model that's in your showroom specifically, not a generic one from the OEM, something that's in your showroom, something that's personalized, and send that out. Right? Use the systems to filter any customer that purchased the previous model of that vehicle and send it out, email blast it to every single one of your customer base. Things like that help establish a connection with your current client base already. And then you have video conference. So video conference is really important because look at right now with COVID, it's become something that's widely used across all different types of industries. But with automotive, it's important as well, because with these restrictions and customers not able to come into the showroom sometimes, or hesitant to even come in, by giving them this new avenue of communication through video conference, you're going to get a few of those customers to actually make that connection, right? Because sometimes you can't get a hold of them on the phone, can't get a hold of them through email, but this is a new way for them to connect. And this is also a good way to relay relevant information to your current client base. I remember I had to buy a vehicle not long ago, but it was, I only found out about the low inventory shortage when I physically went into the dealership. But it had been going on for a few months, and I was kind of like, oh wow, I wish someone had contacted me to tell me like, hey, you know, there's a shortage is coming up, right? You might want to start looking for your next vehicle now rather than later, right? And these are just some of the types of things that we can do with the video to reach out to our current client base to keep them up to date with news that's going on at your dealership specifically. The point here is video is your friend, dealers, and use it, embrace it, and it will take you to that next level when it comes to communicating with your customers. Next slide. This one's nice because I like to talk about when I first started in the dealership world as a salesperson and how things have changed. You know, 15 years ago, life as a salesperson was much different. But now it couldn't be a better time to be a salesperson because technology is here and it's making our lives a lot easier. It's allowing us to focus on that customer that's in front of us, that customer that's on the lot, that customer that just walked in through the door, and things like follow up, things like maintaining that communication with customers that you sold a car a few years ago. That can all be automated for us now. And it's really important to keep these things in mind, right? For managers, for example, you can now, with a few clicks of a button, you can go into a system and make sure that you don't have any orphan customers. Make sure you have no unassigned customers, just 1 or 2 clicks, and you can assign them to any salesperson you want, or assign them to that new salesperson that you hired recently that's hungry and ready to get some sales under his belt, right? Features such as these also allow us to continue the conversation with our customers that already exist. Next slide. Okay, when should I contact my lease customer? So this has changed quite a bit, because if I go back to just 3 years ago, we were reaching out to customers, and it's crazy when I even think about this now, but you know, at the earliest, maybe 90 days, but typically salespeople were reaching out 60 days, 30 days before the lease renewal or lease end. And when you think about it, that's kind of crazy, right? Especially in today's time, right? And our customers, how they buy, why they buy, their habits have changed a lot. So we need to change with it. And so what I'm going to do is just kind of a few little tips on that everyone should follow to maintain that contact. First things first, you need to start monthly follow-ups. Yeah, so monthly follow-ups to stay in touch with your client. When I say monthly follow-ups, I mean using automation and using reminder systems that will allow your salespeople to know, give them tasks to follow up with certain customers every single month to stay in touch with them. And you can set these parameters to, you know, hey, a customer that I sold a car to 6 months ago, 8 months ago, I want to be reminded down the road to follow up with them, send them some type of relevant information about a new model, about something that's happening at the dealership, whatever it may be. And they will have these monthly tasks to stay in touch with all of their customers or all of the dealership's customers. And when it comes to lease customers, you got to be contacting them minimum a year before the lease end, not 90 days or 60 days. It's got to be a year. They got to start. You got to make that contact right away so that they don't end up, you know, looking at a different brand, or even worse, staying with the same brand but going to a different dealership, all because you didn't stay in touch with them. And when it comes to leasing, the number one reason that a customer doesn't go back to the same dealership it isn't because of something that you did as a dealer. It's often because of something you didn't do. And that's the follow-up. That's the communication that we're trying to solve here. Next slide. Finance renewal. This is the one that has by far the biggest potential, guys. A finance customer is a very unique customer because we treat them in the way where when we sell them a car, if it's a 60-month, 72-month term, in our minds, we kind of think that, oh, well, you know, they might come back in 60 months or 72 months, but we know this isn't the case. And to get these numbers up for our finance renewal customers, we just got to start doing some, you know, change the way we look at them, right? And the easiest way to do that is start treating these customers the exact same way you would treat a lease renewal customer, which is maintaining that contact and assuming that they're going to get out of their vehicle in 2, 3, or 4 years, even if they're in a 60-month, 72 or 84-month term. And we know, guys, that very few of these customers actually complete these terms. I remember as a finance manager for years, I would do these long terms, and these same customers that took out an 84-month term, they were back 2, 3, maybe 4 years later to get a brand new vehicle. Often these finance customers have a quicker turnaround than a lease customer, because when it's all about the mind frame. When they start thinking about, oh, wow, I'm in an 84-month term or 72-month term, I don't want to do that. I don't want to be stuck with this car for that long. They're gonna want to change cars, change vehicles. So it's important to maintain communication and keep these finance customers, even in the long-term ones, up to date on what's going on with your brand, with your dealership, so that they come back to you and you retain them and sell them another car. Benefits of customer retention. So there's many benefits once you get that customer that you've already sold the vehicle to come back. And one of them is that trade-in vehicle. If you're getting that trade-in vehicle, it's usually the hope that that customer that you sold the vehicle to has also been having the vehicle serviced at your dealership. And if that's the case, you have all the service records on this car. You know this car. This is the ideal vehicle that you want in your used car inventory. So that's one right there. Another one is word of mouth advertising. And I'm going to spend a little bit of time on this because when I was at the dealership, we would have monthly meetings about things like budgets. And we would often talk about, okay, what's our advertising budget for this month? What are we going to be spending it on? And it was spent on many different things, right? Radio ads, billboards, print ads, SEO, all different types of stuff. But everyone knows the old saying, the best marketing or the best advertising you can get is word of mouth. But how do we invest in that? How do we put money towards that? And it's quite simple, guys. It's investing in automation and tools that will allow your sales team and anyone at your dealership to maintain contact with your customers. They appreciate it. They like it when they get that happy birthday email. They like it when you reach out and give them new information, or just say, hey, how are things going with the vehicle? Is there anything I can help you with? Any questions you may have about it? Do you want to stop in? Having a customer once a year, have a customer appreciation event. It doesn't have to be anything huge, right? And these tools will help you email blast every single one of your customers to make them aware about this event that you're going to have. Invest money in word of mouth advertising, because that's where the true value lies. And then finally, dealing with a customer that you've already had, this is the best, guys. We know this. This is a customer that knows the sales team. He knows he knows his or her salesperson. He knows the manager, knows the service team, knows the service manager, knows where the washrooms are. This is a customer that's comfortable. This is a customer whose guard is down. They trust you. But establishing that trust wasn't because you sold them a vehicle in the first place. A lot of times it's because you kept communication with them after the sale. And that's where that trust was truly established. They feel a connection, and you've now created a loyalty with these customers. And these are the best customers that you can have. Okay, just some
Very, thank you. Thank you so much. Some great insights there. Yeah, if you don't mind just summarizing, and we did have a specific question for you as well that I'll ask you after
So just some takeaways: use automation to resell and maintain communication with your existing client base. Treat your finance customers the same way you treat your lease customers, and never forget to stay engaged after the sale, because some dealers do it very well, but others, we all know, don't, right? So just keep these things top of mind and try to create a culture in your dealership that focuses on this.
There's one question specifically around these follow-up cadence, and at what point does it start turning into spam and you end up bothering the customers? Do you have any advice on that?
Yeah, absolutely. It comes back to, I remember I had a salesperson ask me this too, like, oh, I'm just spamming my customers at this point. So for example, a lot of salespeople aren't called salespeople in the dealership anymore. They're called a product advisor, for example.
Product specialist.
Yeah, product specialist, right? This is when that title really comes into effect. It's after the sale. You're going to be advising your customer. You're not going to be spamming them. You're going to be reaching out to them when it's relevant, right? You're going to be staying up to date with them. I'm not saying contact them every single month, every 2 months. No, contact them, maintain a regular communication with them, so that if they have a question or anything, they're going to reach out to you, and send them stuff that's relevant. Sell them something that's relevant to them, right? And some examples I gave was, things that are happening at the dealership, things that are happening with the brand, and things that are happening with the type of model of vehicle that they currently have.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Rui. We have quite a few questions that have come in that we're going to answer. Just a quick one before we jump into that. So we do have, thanks first of all to all of our presenters. We'll take some time to answer these questions. We do have one more session coming up next week. It's a French session. So anyone in French Canada was interested, you still have time to register for that. And Ivan and myself will be back March 23rd. We have a couple of guests from VO. Super excited. Anything to do with inventory conversations with those guys, it's going to be interesting. So if you can, please join us. Yeah, you had Ivan. I know that you wanted to just touch on this one as well. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and we always posting tips and best practices and insights, obviously in bits on social media. So by all means, follow us on any social media channels. And now we can go to the Q&A, and there are a few questions that came in. Since we're on Rui, I'll go over the first one, which is from Kendall Ferguson, Mohawk Ford in Hamilton, Ontario. What is the average length a customer stays in their finance contract, no matter what term? That's for Rui.
Okay, it's a good question. So there's a few different factors that all go into this, but basically the number is 50%. And that's 50% because of a lot of customers just don't want to see out an extremely long-term contract, and they want to get into something new because that's just our culture now, right? We always get the newest phone every 1 or 2 years. We usually typically want to get into a newer vehicle so that we don't have to worry about, it breaking down and it being out of warranty. But then there's other factors such as, accidents, personal issues or personal things like someone, a baby or a new family member coming into the picture, right? So typically, long story short, 50% actually see out the entire term.
Cool, thanks. There was a question earlier from Rudy Brito. I guess this one's for me. How do you transition from your campaign and strategy? Typically, it takes a while to build a good working strategy and campaign. Yes, I had mentioned that strategy is based on things like what you have in stock. And yes, you do want to run them for at least 60 days. If there's great offers on vehicles, hone in on those. And that's where you change the strategy and move it. This is why I mentioned that I hope that OEMs actually create 60-day sales events rather than 30 days, because it would be better for digital. We also have a question. I hope that answers that, by the way. It looks like a question from Gary Crosby. And this one's for Mathew. So it looks like store visits are the most important conversion in the purchase process. That's interesting, actually. Any word on when we can configure our campaigns with that as a conversion goal? I'm assuming that's in Google Ads itself.
Yeah, it's delightfully complex. So store visits, unlike other conversions, not something you necessarily configure. It is more a data point that we expose when we see a critical mass of impressions, clicks in the accounts in Google Ads, and the campaigns in the account in Google Ads, and then the corresponding number of people, foot traffic actually going into the business. So there's like, I have a set of slides on this on kind of like the what is required. You probably, most accounts now, it was more of a problem a few years ago, are doing the things that they need to do to unlock that store visits data point. However, it's still elusive, and it's still dependent on, they won't even tell me what the numbers are, but this critical mass of clicks, impressions on the one side, and the right amount of foot traffic on the other. And so what we've seen during COVID is because of the reduction in foot traffic for all types of businesses, dealers, OEMs, and other retailers, other types of businesses, QSR, restaurants, etc., the store visits have sort of started to disappear from a lot of accounts, just because you have so many fewer people going. So just at the point when the product was fully released to all dealers, COVID hit and foot traffic to dealership fell off a cliff. So the unlocking it is not something you can necessarily do. What are the things that are really required? What are the kind of things you need to look for? First, it's that you have your Google My Business location verified, and that it's the profile's in good standing and not spammy, that you've associated that profile to your Google Ads account, and then are running the location extensions in as many places as possible. So location extensions on all your campaigns in Google Ads, as many as, some of them may not make sense to run on, but as many campaigns as makes sense, as well as potentially then running one of those local campaigns like I described, and or adding those location extensions to other campaign types like video and even display. So that really optimizes the opportunity for that location extension to serve in your creative. And then ensuring that your campaigns run consistently. So my colleague Ryan and I were talking to an auto group many months ago, years ago now, and they were also trying to unlock store visits in their accounts. And however, what they were doing to manage cost in the dealership was that every month, once they had a lead goal target, and if they hit that lead goal by, say, the 25th day of the month, they would pause all of their search campaigns. And from a overall management perspective, that makes sense. But what it meant was it sent the data model back to zero, right? It's no longer collecting data to determine whether or not it can expose store visits. And so we need kind of 60, 90 days of consecutive data in the account to be able to unlock that data on an ongoing basis. So it means, instead of pausing all of their accounts, if they had just pulled back to like a more moderate spend, or maybe paused, certain promotional campaigns and kept some brand and nameplate stuff on, then there would have been current concurrency of data and consistency of data, and that would have been unlocked. But it's there, it's available. The trick is to find out what is this magical combination of clicks, impressions, and actual foot traffic.
Cool, thank you. I know it's 4 o'clock, and if you have to go, you have to go. But if you want, there are a couple of more questions that I don't want to leave unanswered, that's for sure. One of them came from Leanna Mohan. I have to be careful and stay in our postal code. If I use custom audiences, will it stay in my geographic zone? Yes. You set your targeting options, so all users have to be within your targeted area. So even your custom audiences to advertise, as long as you're targeting them within the geo, they will be in the area. If they are somewhere else, they will not be seen. And then one question, I hope that answers you. Another question that came in for Madeline Dubé from Doug Brown. Will the results be the same even if a person searches via mobile? I think she's talking about organic searches. Will it be the same if they do it by mobile? This one's for Madeline.
Yeah, so that's a very good question. It depends. It will depend on how your website was built. So if you have what we call a responsive website, it means that you will have the same website for both desktop and mobile. So in that case, yes, Google will index just one website. So your organic search results will show up the same for mobile and desktop. However, if your website provider is using what we call a M.dot website architecture, you have two websites, one for mobile and one for desktop. In that case, Google will be indexing two completely different websites. So your search results on mobile, they risk being different from what you will have on desktop. So you need to take this into consideration. But if your website is responsive, you will have the same organic search result. They will show up the same on mobile and desktop.
Great, thanks, Matt.
The one thing I would add,
Okay.
the one thing I would add to that, Madeline, is that a couple of years ago, we flipped the priority of the index. And what does that mean? It means that where up until about 2018, all of the links you saw in mobile and on desktop, whether it was ads or organic, were derived and pointed to desktop sites. But then over time, like pretty much most businesses on the planet, we realize there's more mobile traffic on search than there is desktop or tablet traffic. And so we flipped the priority. So the index that is actually exposed to everyone, and whether it's mobile or desktop, is derived from the mobile experiences. So in many ways, your mobile experience is even more important to your overall ranking than your desktop experience. So it's I think not well known, or we certainly had blog posts about it, but we kind of went with the flow of where usage was, and we flipped the index. And so mobile, it's a big deal. I don't know if you knew that. It's a big deal.
Cool, thanks, Matthew. One from Rudy Brito. How do you connect what's happening in the showroom, on the showroom floor, or market share opportunity based on Zip with automation? So I think what you're referring to there, Rudy, is that how do you input sold vehicle data? And so in terms of leads, the automation itself, if you're using AI, will see interest based on conversions. And of course, those are leads. So you're automating, or you're doing converting towards leads. So this is where you have to steer the AI. So if you see a lot of sales on the showroom floor for a certain model, that's the one you want to hone in on. And when I talk about steering the AI, that's kind of it. In terms of like a good example of high performing vehicles that don't reflect on the showroom floor were those ones that I talked about, like a 370Z, a Corvette, M-Series, Challenger. All these look really good. And that's why the algorithm goes towards those cars, because the clicks are good, the time on site is good, everything looks good. They might submit a facetious lead or whatever it is, but that's where you want to pause those and then make sure that it's going towards what you want. So you have to control the automation. For zip code, this is why custom audiences are important to upload, because you're going to get that sales data in there of your sold customers. And of course, then the AI is going to make sure to try to optimize or create lookalike audiences for that type of geography. We had a question from Maxime Bellevaux. This one's for you, Matthew. The right car and the right price determine dealer selection. 43% choose overall price. Is it still that high considering everyone is now selling at MSRP? Do you still see that as a factor?
Yeah, I think it is, and I think the truth of the matter is, the majority of consumers don't know what that means. So they Google what MSRP means and see what the actual acronym is, but they don't really know what that means. So I think it will, and even as recently as yesterday, I was talking to a colleague that was looking to buy a truck, and he told the classic story of two dealerships. One offered him a deal, the other didn't. He went with the one that offered him the deal. Like it was. So I think in terms of the average consumer, they don't know that dealers are making more money per vehicle sold than they have ever in the history of the world. They just know they need a new vehicle, and this is the going price for that vehicle. So if there is opportunity for differentiation, if there is opportunity for some sort of offer, whatever format that comes in, whether it's supplemental service, whether it's sponsored by the OEM or not, then yeah, price is still a deciding factor. And I think that will probably, and what I used to liken this to, like back in 2019 when I first started doing Think Dealer, I was like, it's how you buy everything else. Like it's kind of how you decide, If you go on Amazon and you're like looking for, oh, I need a new USB cable, you decide which USB cable to buy based, because they're all the same, by price and availability. Is it in stock? Am I going to get it quickly? What price am I going to pay? So I think e-commerce has really educated the consumer, and that's why those are the number one and number two factors for pretty much deciding how to buy everything, including vehicles.
Great. And Gary Crosby, for Rui, can ActiveX merge two data feeds, such as a service database and a sales database?
Yes. Yes, we can. So once a customer is entered into the front end, the sold vehicle information remains with that client card. And if that customer is accessed from the service department, the exact same customer client card is accessed, and information about the vehicle, service, things like that that have been done throughout that customer's journey with the dealership and the vehicle will all be recorded within that system. So yes, they do merge seamlessly.
Cool, thank you. And the last question is from Gary. I'm hearing a lot that we want 60 to 90 days to get the most benefits. However, with a 30-day selling cycle, is it best to pause a campaign and then update the ad groups? If you're manually updating your ad groups, just like I said in the presentation, is not a good thing. It should be automated. And so it's constantly updating ad groups daily, every day, to the amount of vehicles that you have in stock and to the best performing vehicles that you have in your inventory. So that's why it's best to use automation in that scenario. Clarice, thank you.
Yeah. Awesome conversation. Thank you everyone who stayed with us till the end as well. Some great questions there. We do hope that you find today's session informative. Please leave us a feedback. You have a super quick survey that's going to pop up when you close your window. We want to know what you want us to talk about in our next session as well. So please feel free to leave us our feedback. Our panelists and co-hosts here as well, thank you so much for all the information you gathered and shared here today. Very insightful, and we hope to have you back on with us soon.